And if you want to come here and, make your own kombucha, great. That's great. Share it with your friends. We love it. Everything you've ever heard about Portland is wrong.
Is it?
I don't know. Let's find out. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul and Seth with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from Cook Park in Tigard, Oregon. So what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about some myths today. I think there's a lot of national misconceptions about Portland. Maybe some of them are kind of true. Maybe some a lot of people are aware of. And there's maybe a few out there that maybe some people aren't aware of.
Yeah, I mean, there's truth to every stereotype, for the most part, and undoubtedly if you're moving to Oregon, if you're moving to the Portland area, you've been doing some research, you've been looking at what different neighborhoods are like, what Portland is like overall as far as the culture, things to do, places to eat, things to see, all that good stuff. And so in this video, we're going to try to dispel some of the biggest myths that you probably have already read online. If this is your first time to the channel living in Oregon, make sure to hit the subscribe button, tap the little bell to get notified when we drop new videos. People reach out to us all the time who are moving to Portland, relocating to the Portland area or other places in Oregon. And if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link below in the description of this video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we'd love to talk to you about your home search.
First myth.
What's the first one?
Portland is weird.
Is Portland weird?
How big is the area where the chickens are able to roam for?
4 acres.
Not as weird as they say.
I've been to a lot of places around the country. I mean, especially big cities, you're gonna get some stuff that's a little bit quirky, a little bit out there, but I think, to some degree, Portland is especially quirky, and some of the things that you may have seen in like shows like Portlandia, for example, which really kind of perpetuates this myth, there may be a sliver of truth or a grain of truth to it, but all in all, at least from my perspective, Portland's a pretty regular place.
I mean, if you want to see weird, go to like a Subway in New York.
Yeah, that's right.
Go to Venice Beach, California. Portland is not going to be able to hold a candle to some of those places. So relatively, it's really probably not that weird. I think people like to kind of latch on, to that stereotype because that's kind of our motto as well. And Portland isn't known for too much, so I think that's maybe one reason people kind of latch on to it. But day to day. Is Portland really weird for like most Portlanders, especially when we're talking about the Tri-County area? I mean, if you're going to see something weird, it's probably going to be in Multnomah County, Washington County, Clackamas County. You're out in the burbs, you just don't see a whole lot. I mean, it's pretty normal. Maybe even some might even call it a little bit boring.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who are moving here, might not be looking to live in the city. Some people want to live in the city, so everybody's looking for something different. And, a lot of that stereotype, a lot of kind of, the reputation that Portland has for all the weird, quirky little things are going to be closer into downtown. And there's a lot of different neighborhoods kind of surrounding the downtown area, especially in Southeast Portland and Northeast Portland, that really fit the prototypical, exactly what you would think of when you're thinking of living in Portland. But a lot of people are going to be moving out to the suburbs, and like Seth said, Clackamas County, Washington County, there's a lot of just very suburban, very kind of run-of-the-mill, suburban life that, to some might seem boring, to some it's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think actually the word that you used actually probably better describes Portland, which is quirky.
Sure.
There's some parts of Portland that are quirky. There's really just not that much that's weird, especially, again, if you're comparing to a big city. If you're coming from a big city, like we've met people coming from big cities before, Portland isn't that weird at all. It's a lot less weird than a lot of places that people are coming from when we're talking about big cities. So it's really not that weird, but it is kind of quirky, and in some areas it's pretty normal and just boring.
Portland's a very artsy place. For example, there's a lot of art galleries. There's a lot of people who maybe kind of don't live the average kind of standard 9-to-5 life, and there's really kind of something for everybody in Portland. I think Portland embraces people who kind of choose to live in their own way, and that's really a big part of what brings people to the area. We do have the naked bike ride every year.
Are we the only place that has the naked bike ride?
I don't know.
I feel like other places probably do too. And if they didn't, I'm sure there's people that would do it.
Yeah, I mean, but I've seen it several times, never participated.
I've never seen
It may or may not be on the bucket list. I don't know, but I've seen it drive by or ride by a handful of times in my life, and we're talking hundreds, maybe a couple thousand people, just butt cheeks out, riding their bikes, and it's something that is just kind of a part of the culture here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little things like that, but you're not going to see a naked bike ride out in Beaverton. You're not going to see a naked bike ride in Lake Oswego or some of the other suburbs that are right next to Portland. So, if that's what you're into and if that's what you're looking to get into, I'd say even if you live out in the suburbs, hey, take your clothes off and go for a bike ride in the city, whatever. Again, I think Portland overall does tend to be pretty accepting, and just the culture here, and the people that Portland attracts, maybe tend to be a little more on the quirky side.
Yeah. All right. Next myth: everybody's outdoorsy.
Oh, I'm a child of Mother Nature. What do you expect?
Is everyone outdoorsy?
Some of us are.
It's a big part of the culture.
Yeah.
But certainly not a requirement.
No, not everybody's outdoorsy. What is kind of the what would you say is the gauge, or how would you measure whether or not somebody is outdoorsy?
Well, I think a lot of people, and this is probably anywhere, a lot of people like to get outside, go on walks, just kind of be outside for a while, get some fresh air. And where we live, there's a ton of opportunity to do that. There's great parks, hiking trails, all within the Portland metro area. I mean, we're less than 10 miles from downtown right now, and we're in, I don't know, a 50-acre park. There's a river behind us. It's green, it's beautiful. And so I think, most people do like to kind of, just get outside, but, outdoorsy. And I think especially somebody moving, to Oregon, to Portland, you hear about the mountains, you hear about the beach, you hear about fishing and hiking and all these things that you can do, which is, again, it's a big part of the culture, but it's not something that, everybody gets into, to that degree necessarily.
Yeah, I think maybe hiking is the first step for some people. If you're not an outdoorsy person, that's maybe what kind of sets it apart. There's people that go outside and just walk and do the walking trails, but then there's actually the hiking, where you get a permit and actually. So I think that's maybe there's probably a lot of people that don't actually do anything like that other than just getting outside and walking around. There's a lot of people that don't hike here. If I think outdoorsy, I think maybe like a Boulder, Colorado.
Sure.
It feels like, and I could be wrong about that. It feels like everybody there is outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are outdoorsy here, but there's plenty of people that never ever go hiking or don't know anybody that goes hiking, or, again, they might, get outside and go for a walk when the sun comes out, which we all, tend to do, just because, the rain. But
yeah. Well, the rain's not that bad though.
Right. But it goes away. It's like you got to go outside now. You gotta soak up that sun.
Right. If you want to get outdoors and be a little more extreme and adventurous, I mean, you can get out to the mountains, to the east. You can get out to the coastal range, and then to the beach to the west, and then even south. You have the Mount Hood National Forest kind of extends south a little bit. You have areas like Silver Falls, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And even within Portland, there's Forest Park and Mount Tabor and a ton of city parks and parks within different suburbs that, again, are huge and have a lot of things that you can, kind of get out and engage in. But, I mean...
And we probably all know plenty of people that never do that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're moving to the Portland area and you think you need to start shopping for hiking boots and gear...
Go to REI.
Yeah, go to REI or, an outdoor store. I mean... it's certainly not a requirement.
Yeah.
You're going to find a lot of people that are into all kinds of different things, and probably wouldn't be caught dead. Hiking even a couple miles.
Wearing some flannel and
well, there's a lot of
banner boots.
Yeah, a lot of people maybe rock the gear a little bit, just as kind of a for style. Maybe that has
that's true.
maybe that's embedded in the culture a little bit. Yeah, maybe that's, and we'll talk about the hipsters later in the video. But
all right, so next, how about this one? Everybody in Portland or Oregon, it's a stoner state. It's a stoner city.
A lot of weed here.
There probably is a lot of weed here.
Yeah. I mean,
that's true.
I think weed was legalized, I don't know, 8 years.
Wasn't it Colorado first?
Yeah, Colorado was first. I think maybe Vermont. There was a second state, and then I think we were the third, maybe fourth. we were like within, we were within maybe the top 5 of states to, or the first 5 rather, to legalize weed. And, it seemed like even growing up, maybe there was a little bit of a culture around weed here in Portland. I don't know. I mean, certainly none of my friends or anything like that. But, now that weed's legalized, there's like, weed tourism. People come here to check out weed shops. It's definitely something that is, very accessible. But I think in terms of, if we're talking about a myth, it's not like everybody smokes weed here. It's not like you see it everywhere or you smell it everywhere. Yeah. That's not the case at all.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I mean, some places don't have weed shops at all, right? So it's kind of it's municipality by municipality. So some towns will allow weed stores and some don't. So some towns in Portland, you're never even going to see any weed stores. Some you'll see them quite frequently. So it just depends. So if it's something that you want to be by, we can show you where that is. If it's something you don't want to be around for whatever reason, you can totally be insulated away from it and be in some place where you don't ever see it. And the tourism stuff, Portland's going to do anything they can to draw people in here. I'm sure there's probably some weed tourism. For the most part, though, it is kind of a myth, I think, because it's just not something most people see, other than if you do live in an area where you live by one of those weed shops.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say too, it's not something that most people even do or think about either. Maybe there's a little bit of a reputation around that, but it's probably a pretty small subset of the culture, I'd say.
Yeah, it's probably not something that, I don't know if you noticed a shift or felt a shift, but it's not something that when it got legalized, you really noticed a difference. In other words, you didn't see people everywhere smoking weed all of a sudden once it was legalized. You saw the shops, here and there, and then again, some places you don't see them at all. So it really didn't change a whole lot once it became legal. So I don't know. I think it's a myth, probably labeling Oregon or Portland as kind of like a stoner or a pot smoking place. Probably not a whole lot different than most areas. Kind of like the weird thing. It's probably not a whole lot different than most big cities.
Yeah, I agree.
Next on the list, how about so Portland's also known for strip clubs.
Again, if you're kind of doing some research, looking about kind of cool or unique things about Portland, it's probably going to come up at some point that Portland has more strip clubs per capita than anywhere else in the country.
And I've heard that for a long time. I think that's like a long-standing, like a long-running thing for whatever reason,
right?
Whatever that is. But that's been a thing that you kind of hear for a long time.
Yeah. So, I guess the myth being that everywhere you go, no matter where you live, there's going to be a strip club on every corner. I mean, would you say that's the case?
It's kind of like the weed thing. I mean, sometimes you might not see any strip clubs for a long period. You'd have to go searching for them to find them. And then some places you can definitely find them too.
Maybe this has to do with kind of the culture and Portland being a very accepting place. Maybe Portland just kind of celebrates the art of nude dancing more than some places in the country. I don't know. But it's not something that you and your group of friends are going to go out and start doing once you move here, or it's not going to be something that's kind of in your face or something that you see everywhere all the time.
It's not part of the culture, really. I mean, I think for most people.
Yeah,
which is why it's a myth.
Yeah, maybe if anything, it's just kind of a funny stat about Portland.
Yeah, right.
One of the things that makes it a little bit
quirky.
Yeah, quirky or unique.
Yeah. All right. So what's next on our list?
I think it's definitely a myth that Portland is a really cheap, affordable place, or that Oregon is a much cheaper place to live than other states in the country.
Yeah, Portland for 2021 ranked out of largest cities in the country 21st. Oregon, the state as a whole, the median being 100, Oregon was ranked 130 by bestplaces.net. So that means that $100 on average nationally, if you come to Oregon, you'd have to spend $130 to get $100 worth of whatever, groceries or home or something like that. So Portland and Oregon in general is a more expensive state. There's more people coming here than leaving here, so that's driving up real estate prices as well. So we have kind of seen that a little bit. Some people maybe we kind of get overlooked like so many other things where it's like, hey, Seattle's super expensive, Washington can be expensive, California, everybody knows California is expensive. So maybe kind of just by default, it feels like maybe Oregon isn't as expensive, but compared nationally to all the other states, it does actually rank up there as being one of the more expensive places.
Yeah, and you know, to some degree, this is all relative. So it kind of depends on where you're coming from, you know, and what you're looking for. As far as the West Coast goes, you know, Portland is the cheapest major city to live on the West Coast. So, you know, if you are coming from San Francisco, Seattle, LA, San Diego, Portland is going to be a little more affordable, you know, kind of across the board.
It's going to feel cheap.
But compared to most of the country, you know, Oregon, the Portland metro area, I mean, between housing costs and, you know, just kind of your other standard costs, utilities, food costs, etc., and taxes as well. You know, income taxes do tend to be a little bit higher here.
Yeah.
Property taxes tend to be a little bit higher than a lot of places around the country. So it's a little bit of a myth that you know, Portland is, you know, cheap or super affordable. But again, that depends on where you're coming from.
All right, next on our list.
What do we got?
Crime.
Crime?
Crime. So I think there's a little bit of a myth, especially the last year or two, that there's high crime, especially violent crime. And Portland really doesn't even come close to ranking nationally for violent crime. So I think
Doesn't crack the top 100, actually.
doesn't even crack the top 100.
Yeah.
There has been maybe a little bit of an uptick in the last few years since the pandemic and some of the social unrest in a few places. You know, and again, if you're moving here, you know, we can kind of show you where those places are and where those places aren't. But overall, compared to all the other major cities, our crime is low here. But you do sometimes hear people saying, hey, it seems like the crime is high in Portland. It seems like there's a lot of unrest. You know, if you're watching the mainstream media and kind of some of like the Portland is burning type of stuff, you know, yes, in a few places it was really bad, was burning, went on for a long time. Probably longer than some of the media even reported, even our local media, but it was pretty concentrated to some small areas. So for most Portlanders, you didn't really experience that. We have places in Portland that are some of the lowest crime places in the country.
Yep.
So it's definitely kind of a misconception, maybe for some people, that crime is higher here.
Yeah, you know, especially outside looking in, if you have looked at the media, you know, and the news in the last couple of years, you know, a lot of people who are moving into the area, you know, that is a question that they ask, like, is Portland safe? And I think that has become a myth about Portland, that Portland is an unsafe place to live. You know, even my grandma in the last couple years, you know, would say, hey, stay out of downtown. But I get downtown all the time, as well as, you know, all across the Portland metro area. You know, it's hard to pinpoint, you know, too many places where it genuinely feels unsafe or that there's a super high level of crime. I would say overall, you know, the crime rate, if you look at the statistics, is pretty low in terms of a national average on a per capita basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's always felt safe to me. Lived here my entire life. Never really experienced any places that felt unsafe. You know, again, with the exception of the last couple years, there's been a little bit of an uptick. So there's maybe a few areas where you might watch out. You might not take your kid to, you know, a particular park or something like that. But those are probably pretty few and far between.
Yeah, I think we can dispel that one. Say, you know, Portland and the Portland metro area is a pretty safe place to live.
Next myth.
It rains all the time. Yeah, it rains a lot.
Yeah, it rains.
Actually, the most recent study I saw was that Portland got the third most days of rain in the country. But if you look at the volume of rain, it didn't crack the top 15. So yeah, there's a lot of rainy, you know, gray days. But is it rain like, you know, you're kind of maybe thinking compared to a place like you're coming from, or compared to just like a torrential downpour? We don't see a ton of that.
Yeah, I mean, torrential downpour, like you don't really see that here, like you see in the South.
Right.
We don't have that same kind of weather. But you know, obviously if you're coming from California, which a lot of people are, you're going to experience a lot of rain, but it's just not constantly raining, like, you know, kind of like the myth. Even on a rainy day, the sun usually tends to get out for a couple hours, and it's really not that bad. So definitely the rain is kind of overhyped.
There's some pretty bad days. There's some pretty gray, rainy, gloomy days, and sometimes for days on end. That does happen, in particular in the winter. You know, if you're looking at kind of December through February, you're going to get a majority pretty bad weather, kind of, you know, by anyone's standard. But, you know, a lot of the fall and a lot of the spring, where the weather is kind of turning, either kind of into or out of summer, you're going to get a lot of days where it'll rain, for 30 minutes and just a little trickle, and then the sun will come out, and then the clouds will come back in, and it'll rain a little bit more. So, you're still going to be able to find opportunities to get outside and do things, and it's not going to be like you're going to want to curl up under a blanket all the time. It's not nearly as bad as they say.
Yeah, not as bad as they say, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, bonus one, culture. I don't know if there's a specific myth for culture, but maybe some myths around culture.
Yeah, I think you hear a lot, and we may have alluded to some of this, and some of the other things that we were talking about, like, there's a lot of hipsters, or, we talked about, for example, there being some rioting going on, and that everybody's involved in that, or even involved politically. There's kind of a reputation for Portland being kind of a hippie place, and everyone eats vegan and does yoga and meditates every day. And in and of itself, because there are so many of those stereotypes about Portland, that kind of shows you how diverse of a culture we have. Really, kind of any of those things, that we listed are things that you could probably kind of get involved with, although I wouldn't encourage anyone to to go out rioting, obviously, but but beyond that, I think and especially like in more recent years, Portland's become a much bigger tech city. We've been kind of known as the Silicon Forest for a long time, but a lot of tech companies have been moving to or being founded and growing in the Portland metro area, and there's kind of a tech culture, dare I say tech bro culture, a little bit. So a lot of these kind of stereotypes that you see about kind of the people and the culture of Portland, like I mentioned earlier in the video, there might be a sliver of truth to every stereotype to some degree. There's a lot of diversity, when you look at all of these kind of different groups and cultures, that you could plug yourself into.
Yeah, I think kind of like you pointed out, there's some maybe more than myths. There's just some contradictions there.
Sure.
Like Portland is very liberal, and most people would probably agree with that. But at the same time, you hear some people say it's filled with right-wing extremists. Both things are probably not exactly going to be true at once. Or kind of like Paul's saying, there's going to be a sliver of truth to that, and the truth probably lies more in the middle, where there's just probably more moderate people here. And that's probably kind of more the big myth is there probably is a little bit more culture, and the fact that there are so many groups and there's so many misconceptions, like it's all hippies, or it's all this group of people, or it's all that group of people. I mean, that sort of makes it evident that there is actually some different culture here, and there's some great pockets of Portland too that you have a lot of culture too. And I think one of the great parts about culture and that you see in Portland is we have a great diversity of food. Portland is one of the best food places probably in the country, and that comes through kind of a diversity of culture, having a lot of different types of people that are making different types of food. So I think maybe there's some contradictions there, more so than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're moving here, there's not going to be any reason for you to have to think that you have to change your lifestyle at all. And I think because we have all of these kind of different stereotypes, different groups about kind of who lives here, that just kind of shows you how welcoming and accepting Portland and the Portland metro area does tend to be. So if you're moving to the Portland area, if you're relocating to Oregon, get in touch with us. We would love to talk to you more about your home search. You can actually click the link below in the description of this video and schedule a Zoom call with us. We can chat 20-30 minutes, talk about your scenario, what you're looking for, what's going to fit you best, or give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email. Either way, we would love to help. And if this video is helpful, hit the like button, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell to get notified when we drop a new video, and thanks for watching.
Take care, everyone.